I don't see anybody else coming in into the waiting room. So I think that I am going to get started. So welcome everyone. My name is Bonnie Zand. I'm a board member of the Native Bee Society of British Columbia. I'm based in the Comox Valley on Vancouver Island, and I'm honored to live in the traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. We're here today to talk about learning more about native bees, which are those bee species that have long-standing relationships with the ecosystems of BC. So I want us to also acknowledge Native peoples who also have those long-standing relationships with those same ecosystems. I'd encourage anyone who wants to go ahead and put the traditional territory that they are coming into the meeting from. Go ahead and put that in the chat. The purpose of our meeting today is to introduce you to the BC Master Melittologist Program, which is an online program of study. And the original Master Melittologist Program, and where most of our content is coming from, is the Oregon State University Master Melittologist Program. And they're kindly allowing non-Oregon residents to also participate in their training, which is just great that we have access to that. And then the Native Bee Society of BC will be adding some additional things into that training for people who, can't get down to Oregon to do all the cool in-person stuff that they do down there. So for our meeting today, we're going to start with a short presentation from the Oregon Bee Atlas taxonomist, Lincoln Best, who's going to talk about that part of the program. Then I'm going to talk about what the Native Bee Society of BC is going to be providing to BC residents who choose to participate in the program. After that, Elaine, who was one of the BC Master Melittologist original students. Last year, some of us got to go through the program. And so she is going to talk about her experience being a part of the program. And then I'll just briefly go over the next steps if this seems like something that you are interested in and want to learn more and sign up. And then I hope we'll have a nice chunk of time for questions for anyone who wants to find out more. All right, and hopefully we will be out of here by 8:30. So I am going to pass this over to Lincoln. I will stop my share so you can go ahead and do yours, Lincoln. And I will mute myself and take it away.
How's that look? Great. Hi, folks. My name is Lincoln Best. I'm a board member of the Native Bee Society of British Columbia, and I'm the taxonomist for the Oregon Bee Atlas here in the Faculty of Horticulture and Extension at Oregon State University. I'm going to try and move through these slides pretty quickly. I'm going to give you an overview of our entire program so you know where we came from, how the program developed, and where we're hoping to go. Okay. So several years ago, the state passed a pollinator health bill, which created the Oregon Bee Project, part of which became the Oregon Bee Atlas, a statewide biodiversity survey. Through that, we've developed the Master Melittology Program. Now, there's a huge incentive to study native bees. There's very few large-scale inventory projects. Bees are extremely diverse, and there's even fewer large-scale bee studies that incorporate floral data. And so there's an enormous initiative for documenting all these species and their relations. So here at Oregon, there's 4 of us that run this program. From the left, it's Adoni Melatologist, myself, Jen Larson, our administrator, and on the right, Sarah Kincaid, our education coordinator. And this originally started out just as the Oregon Bee Atlas. There would be in-person training every year, and that would provide the education everyone would need to take part in the Bee Atlas. And that was a lot of fun, and then the pandemic hit. And so we had to transition all of our education online, and we spent a lot of time thinking about this. And we realized it was a great opportunity to really centralize a lot of education. And so now how this program functions is we recruit the volunteers and then we provide all this extensive training online. And so that's where we are here today with the Master Melittologist Program, which is a self-paced, stepwise program, much like a Master Gardener program, where you complete online modules, attend events, contribute to your local community in some way, and then are able to move through different levels of certification in the program. Now, through this program, and a lot of this is certainly Oregon-centric, but we will clarify over the next hour what we will be offering in British Columbia specifically. But in Oregon, we provide you with crazy maps like this one, which are hard to interpret, but it's a treasure map of all cool flowers that you can go and hunt for bees on. And in the background of the map are these different landforms. And these are areas where we're permitted to do collections. So along with this education, we provide access on campus here for weekend microscope sessions and other microscope sessions around the state. We provide week-long taxonomy courses where you can really join forces with all the hyper nerds and get into the real nitty-gritty of microscopy and native bee studies. And we also offer different field events to learn about field methods, collection, data collection, experimental design, and so on. We offer online mentor programs where we have monthly meetups with our out-of-state people to provide extra education and opportunities for engagement with those folks. The way the specimen collection works is you take a photo of a native plant, upload that observation to iNaturalist, and then you'll enter in your sample number and the number of bees you collected. And that observation record on iNaturalist serves as the sample identification for your bee collection. We're able to use that data in iNaturalist to generate entomological labels that will be the little tiny data labels that go on your bee specimens, and we ship those to your house. And so far we've collected about 15,000 individual samples of bees from 1,250 flowering plant species, which is pretty wild. And there's a huge distribution throughout the state of Oregon at this point, thousands and thousands and thousands of samples. These are what the native bee specimens look like once they're labeled, nice and orderly. And so what happens after you've had all your training, you've done some specimen-based collections in the field, you'll submit your collections to me and I'll undergo the weekend-long task of identifying tens of thousands of bee specimens. It's no big deal at all. I will assess the collections that come in, how well they're prepared, where the problems might lie. I will assess the identifications. And so one of the things people are able to do through the program is collect bees and identify their bees. And for those of you, at least in Oregon, you'll get a report card that tells you specifically what bees you caught, where you caught them, what species they are, what genera, how they're organized into families, and the kind of community of bees that you were able to sample across the season. So far, our members have found lots of new state records, certainly new species records, and we do an annual review at our Bee Atlas conference, or I guess now it's a Master Melittologist conference in March of every year. So that's coming up in a few weeks. The full cycle of this program that you can see here is, the recruitment and training of volunteers through our Master Melittologist Program, working up the data, archiving and vouchering those specimens in a museum, and then of course making that data available, which is one of the great benefits of this kind of project. So last Friday, we published our data paper on the findings from 2019, including the release of 25,000 records onto GBEF. And we're also working on developing an interactive bee atlas where we can see all this data presented. We do have a website where you can find all of this stuff. So that's what I have. And I think maybe Bonnie and I are going to talk about more of the specifics now about what is offered in BC and what is not compared to the Oregon version. Is that right, Bonnie?
Yes. So let me, all right. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes. It's not presenter view.
No. Okay. Hang on. Let me try that again. Let me bring this up and then, yeah, we'll talk about, so what Lincoln has described is what more or less happens in Oregon. But in BC, we are not able to offer quite as much as what you get if you are actually in person in Oregon. And so let me just—
It's one of the main things to differentiate is that the Master Melittologist Program, it is training. In Oregon, we combine that with our Bee Atlas, which is a statewide biodiversity survey. And so at this time, there is no province-wide biodiversity survey in British Columbia where the back end is supported. So the identification of the specimens and the vouchering into a museum and the publication of the data. And so that's the big distinction to make.
Yeah. Yeah. So like Link said, that's kind of the first thing I've got here. The big difference is that we will not take your specimens. We will not identify your specimens. We're just not set up at this point to do that. And so although you will be receiving all of the training that the Oregon participants get in how to collect museum quality specimens, and I believe you will be sending us labels. Is that correct, Link?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you collect specimens, you will be able to use the excellent OSU protocols where you go and you document the plant on iNaturalist and you get your specimen labels come in that you can put on your specimens that will tell you what plants they're associated with. But at the end of that whole process, instead of passing your box of bees over to Lincoln, you just have your own box of bees. And so because we are not able to taxonomically support those bee collections, you are not required to collect bees in order to be part of this program in BC. So in Oregon, I think there is a requirement that you do collect bees. That is not a requirement in BC. If you choose to collect bees, you will receive enough training to create really nice, high quality specimens that you could then donate to a museum. You could keep as your own personal reference collection. And some of the training you'll be getting will be to teach you how to identify those bees that you have collected. And you could also keep those bees and make them into, say a collection that you could use for outreach. So a nice display that you could show to school groups or take to farmers markets and use to teach other people about the bees of British Columbia. So that's kind of the biggest change. The other big change is because we're not supporting specimen collecting, we wanted to support another method of learning about bees. And so here in BC, we are going to be supporting photo-based collecting. And so we've had the Native Bee Society of BC has run a really successful iNaturalist project last year under the leadership of Lori Wiedenheimer, getting people to go out and document all sorts of bees from around British Columbia. And for this year, for the BC Master Melittologist people, so if you choose to go through this program, we're going to have a separate iNaturalist project for our BC Master Melittologist students. And the idea behind that project is that we want to do something similar to what Oregon is doing, where they are linking the flower that you're, in this case, photographing off of with the bees that you're collecting. Because getting those floral records is super important and tells us a lot about bees and what kind of flowers they use. And so we'll have an iNaturalist project where you will both document the flower and then you will document the bees that are using it. And we'll have a code that will allow you to link those together. So you'll be able to go on and say, what am I all seeing on yarrow? What am I all seeing on gumweed? And pull those up and be able to see which bees are using which flowers. So that's the big thing that we're hoping to be able to support you with. As well, because Oregon does all of these really cool field things where they get their volunteers together out in the field and they go out and they teach them how to collect and how to do things. We would really like to also do some of those things here in BC. And so we have some volunteer-led field days that are currently planned. So I've got people committed in Kamloops, in the Comox Valley, so that one's me. And then Lincoln is currently planning to be in the Kootenays and the Okanagan at some point this summer. And we have pressured him into agreeing to do some field training for participants in this program. So that'll give you the ability to go out with someone who has at least had some experience collecting bees with a net, getting them into a vial, using the iNaturalist. And so there's some things that are just much easier to learn in person than just from watching a video. So we wanted to support that. We're also looking at some other spots where we may be able to run field days. And so there's a possibility of having a field day in Vancouver, Victoria, and possibly some other sites. Another thing that is kind of missing from our BC program, because we'd have to travel all the way to Oregon to do it, is being able to have those microscope days and that ability to look at bees under a microscope, get a really good in-depth look at them with someone who knows what they're talking about, like Link. And so one of the ways we're trying to address that is that for those of us that were part of this project last year, we've been doing bee microscope Zoom sessions. And this is where I hook my camera up to my microscope and then log into Zoom via that way. And we can all be on Zoom and see the bee under the microscope and look at them and turn them in real life and ask questions, and look at different structures and kind of run through a key, trying to figure out what they are. Or if people are having trouble figuring out the differences between things, we can look at those and work on them together. At the moment, that's more of a winter activity. Things get kind of busy in the summer, but depending on interest, we may be able to extend those also into the summer season. And then another thing that the Native Bee Society of BC can kind of offer to people who are interested in going through this training would be that we are hoping to do some bee walks in the summer. We're also having our Native Bee Study Group, which is going to be a monthly meeting where we get together and talk about bees and share bee photos with one another. And so that's another space where we're able to create some community and discussion around the BC Master Melittologist Program. And those won't be just for BC Master Melittologist participants. Those are Native Bee Society of BC events. But I think there are things that would add a lot of value to people who are also doing this online training. And then I think I would just add that at the moment, putting on additional events is somewhat funding dependent. We are currently working on having a funding agreement put in place with OSU, where some of the registration fees for joining the BC Master Melittologist Program will get kicked back to us here in the Native Bee Society of BC. And we can then use those to fund maybe creating some BC specific program modules, maybe doing some other events. I would love if we did something in the winter where we could get together, rent a lab at a university, and all come together and look at our photos and our bees together with some microscopes. Lincoln, is there anything I'm missing that we should also clarify just in terms of differences between those two programs?
Yeah, good. That was a pretty good summation. I would be a little cautious about what we promise as far as funding from one program to another before there's any agreements signed off on, but we are working towards earmarking some of those registration fees to support at least events in British Columbia. This is the very, very beginning of this. And so we're hoping to be able to make it grow and make this program a sustainable part of the Native Bees Society of British Columbia. And so this is just like, last year was the first cycle with about 4 British Columbia participants, and we're hoping that we can grow it from there. Any other differences? I would just emphasize that aside from all the modules available through the online Canvas platform, there's just tons of lectures on, and a lot of them are really in-depth on topics related to taxonomy, identification, bee biodiversity, at a really high level. If you want to watch a lecture on how to identify Lasioglossom subgenera like Evolaeus and Hemihalictus and Sphacotogastra, we have lectures on that. We have lectures on the subgenera of Osmia. And so there's an enormous amount of content there. And so, of course, you can imagine developing all that content is not cheap.
And Lincoln, I think you're also going to send, for BC participants, we will be getting a manual that kind of runs through how to do everything that OSU mails us. And then also, Lincoln also mentioned this, but there are also the monthly mentor sessions. And so those are provided by Oregon State University, and they have a mentor specifically for people that are not in Oregon. And so last year there was a group of us in BC and Washington, and once a month we would meet with our mentor, and she would spend an hour. We could ask questions about what was going on, and she would kind of come up with educational material for us on sort of whatever we asked for. So that was excellent, being able to have someone we could go to with our questions and get some of that one-on-one learning. And so that will continue to be available. I'm seeing a couple questions in the chat. So there is a fee to be part of the Master Melittologist Program. And so that gets paid to OSU. And that is $300 US. Is that correct, Link?
That's right. And also, so that's a one-time fee to start the program, and there's a $30 annual service fee to continue. Yeah,
so it's not a program that you necessarily just kind of go through the 6 modules, tick the boxes, and then leave. It's sort of something that a community that you continue to be a part of and continue to learn. And I know OSU keeps adding more things onto their program. And so every year there's a little bit more information to learn. And just being a part of the community is also great. I am gonna, let's see what's.
So if you are interested in learning more, you can visit our website here. If you're super keen and you want to sign up, the registration is there. We have open registration right now. And our intake is really March 1st. And then so in the first couple of weeks of March, we have our conference. This year's keynote speaker is Olivia Messenger Carroll, who wrote the Bees in Your Backyard book, one of the most awesome books about native bees. And then we'll have a series of introductory seminars for the new admittees into the program.
Yeah, okay, so I think, I see some questions coming in the chat, but I think let's get Elaine to just come on and maybe tell us a little bit about what her experience was like being in the program. And then I'll talk a little bit more about kind of what the next steps are and a little bit more about kind of who this program is really for. So you ready to go, Elaine?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so I thought the program was really positive. I mean, the modules were really interesting, and there was little quizzes after them, but you could continue, you could redo the quiz and get perfect if you're into that. I'm not really, but when I started it, I assumed that we were supposed to collect, and so I was going to go out there collecting. So although if you're from Oregon, you get all the little things like the collecting jars and that they're filled with the plaster of Paris solution, I had to figure all that out myself. So that was one question I was going to ask you, you know, how does, if like I was lucky because I had access to killing jars and stuff like that. And ethyl acetate. And so I see that you're not going to be collecting. And so I'm sort of, I don't know, I feel a little disappointed with that.
Elaine.
Yes.
It's not that you're not allowed to collect. You can collect, but we still don't have the ability to get linked to identify all of our bees.
Okay. Right. So on that note, I have been, well, Lincoln came through in the fall, and I have 2 boxes, and he identified one box just by shuffling everything around. And now the second box, I've been trying to do it on my own, and I've been sending him photographs a little bit, but a lot of it is on my own. I think I have maybe 10 left to do. So I thought that was pretty good for somebody who's not an entomologist. The modules are really excellent. They're well, you know, for videos, I mean, they're really well done. So I learned a lot. And I think it's really important to partner the flower with the bee. I think that is so important. And I think the collecting part of it is that I realized that if I just photograph, I'm going to miss a lot, because what you see are the charismatic bees. You don't see the little ones. And when I'm collecting, I have like piles of these little tiny bees that I never even knew existed, which I've learned how to identify now. So I think if it's just photography, I think you're going to miss a lot, actually. So I don't know if you have any questions on that. I'm done.
Thank you, Elaine. Yeah, so Elaine was a big part of the program this year. And as she says, you know, you're not required to collect to be a part of the program, but it's something you might consider doing on at least a limited basis, because there are some pretty little things that are really hard to be able to identify without seeing them under a microscope. So I'm just going to kind of run through. So, you know, you've heard some information about the program. Before we get into the questions, just to answer a few more questions maybe before you ask them. Who should join the Master Melittologist Program? So who would be benefiting from this program? And I want to start with saying everyone is welcome. There are no prerequisites. You don't have to have any kind of university degrees in order to join this program. We do try and start with the basics, but you should expect some fairly in-depth study. So we're going to use a bunch of words like tegula and scopa. It's going to be lots and lots of new vocabulary, and we're going to be looking at huge diversity of bees and the different words we use to describe them, families and genre and subgenre. And so you should want to learn that and enjoy that. Having a background in entomology is helpful because you'll already have some of the vocabulary. Having a background in botany would also be great because, again, flowers are really important to bees. This would be a really great program if you were a grad student or a professional or somebody doing native bee work, but you can also just be a member of the public who is really interested. And that is, that interest is really the important thing. The program does start with the basics. I think one of the early lectures in the module on the bee identifications starts with what is the difference between a bee, a fly, and a wasp. And so we're starting at that basic level. But then, as Link was saying, some of those more advanced lectures are looking at the subgenre of things like Andrena and Lasioglossum. And so there's a really wide range of where you can fit into that material. And because it's self-paced, you can take your time working your way through it. And if it takes you a couple of years to get through everything, that's fine. There isn't any kind of timeline that you need to hurry up and get it finished by. So really this program is for anybody who wants to ask questions and look closely for answers. And if seeing a bee kind of gets you started asking a whole string of questions, what bee is this? I see another one over there. It's a little bit of a different size. Is it the same thing? Ooh, that one has spikes. Can I figure out what it is from looking at those spikes? Can I find out what those spikes are for? Why are these bees on these flowers and those bees on those flowers? If those are the sort of questions you have and the sort of knowledge you want, this is a program that I think you would enjoy. But I do want to say, please don't expect that this is a program that will answer all of your questions. One of the parts of it that is really great is that you are actually a part of figuring out the answer. And so just like the students in Oregon are creating these maps of where different bees are found and what flowers they're associated with, we would like to do some of that here in BC as well. And that's part of what our Master Melittologist iNaturalist project will be doing, is trying to make some of those connections and do some of that learning. I also wanted to add just about that iNaturalist project is that if you choose to collect specimens and want to upload photos of your specimens to that project, that's also a great way. We can't take your specimens, but you can get some help with identifying them that way through photographs. And again, you can use the same process of linking the flowers and the bees so that we can have that information. So you're going to be able to contribute to science and conservation through this project. The project is set up so that it's good for people who like to kind of do self-study and learn at their own pace. But it's also great for people who want to connect. And that's one of the things we really wanted to provide for the BC participants was a bit of a sense of community and to get us together so that people could talk to each other and make those connections with other people who are passionate and are learning about bees together. And so the next steps, if you're kind of interested in learning a little bit more and you want to come out to a couple events first, before you decide if you want to sign up, the BC Native Bee Study Group is happening on Wednesday, the February 23rd, and you can RSVP for that on the website. It's going to be our first one. So you're welcome to come out to that and chat bees with some people. As well, if you're interested in seeing what that microscope Zoom looks like, we don't have in-person microscope sessions right now, but this is our best way to approximate it. And we're having one of those on February 24th, which is this Thursday. We're going to be looking at some members of the family Halictidae, the sweat bees. So if you're interested in jumping in on that and just seeing what that's like, shoot me an email. My email address is right here, and I can send you the link to that session. If you are interested in signing up for the Master Melittologist Program, the registration deadline is March 1st. And Link already put the link for that in the chat, but I'll put that in as well. And then the conference, the Oregon Bee Atlas Conference, is happening on March 13th. And so once you've signed up for the program, you're able to come along and go to that conference and get fired up for bee season, which is coming soon. And having said that, I think we are going to turn it over to some questions. So I will stop my sharing. And if anybody has questions and they want to either throw their hand up and then they can ask it, or else I will just go through the chat and see if we've got any questions in there. So I see lots has been happening in the chat. So I see Brian Peterson has asked about macro photography techniques. So we don't currently have any modules or guidance on macro photography techniques. But one of the things that hasn't really been talked about yet is that within the Oregon program, you collect service points by doing either outreach events or service events as part of being in the program. And so if anybody wanted to join the program for BC and get some service points by creating the modules on macro photography techniques, I think we would love that. It'd be an excellent addition to the program. Or if someone wanted to do a session for the participants on how to take good photographs. It won't be me, I'm a terrible photographer. See, there's some questions about microscopes, and I think Link has answered them in the chat. I think, Lincoln, you have some guidance on a good microscope to get, right?
Yeah, so you'd be surprised. We've been doing this for a few years now, so we have information on almost everything you could imagine. We have a document on which scope to buy as an amateur, where to buy it, which model, approximate price. And all of that kind of stuff. What kind of lighting to use for your scope. And the scope we advertise is around 300, maybe a little more. You know, the prices on everything are going up. But that's a scope that I used for years. And I used to carry 4 of those over to the Vancouver Island when I was running the Vancouver Island bee course in Shawnigan there. The 3 textbooks are The Bees in Your Backyard, The Solitary Bees, and what's the third one? The Bumblebees of North America Field Guide. I'm sure that must be it.
Yeah.
A question from Chloe. What's the rough percentage of taxonomy, natural history, etc.? I would say it's about 1/3 collection information, how to collect data, how to collect bees, how to use iNaturalist, and then about 1/3, natural history and biology and ecology of bees, and then probably about 1/3 taxonomy. What do you think, Bonnie? And that's just within the modules.
Yeah, I think within the modules, I think there's 5 modules up there right now, and one of them, and it's the biggest module, I think, is all on like actual bee stuff, how to tell your different bees apart and the different bee families. Within the modules, and there are these 5 modules you go through, the first couple are quite collection focused, and there's a couple things that are very Oregon specific, like getting permits. But there's also recordings, like once you get in there, there's a whole Canvas platform. And so there's all these recordings of these mentor sessions that have been done. You must have like 10 or 15 1-hour mentor sessions on various topics from advanced to beginner, talking about in-depth different bee families and their biology and their taxonomy. And so there's a lot of information in there if you just want to learn about bees and you don't care about the collecting bit, or you're not from Oregon. So there's a lot in there.
Yeah, why don't I just give a quick little expose of the Canvas platform. I'll just share my screen here and just I'll show you folks what the online part consists of. So this is Canvas. This is a platform used for online education by lots and lots of different universities. So here we have a calendar of events and various things. We have huge frequently asked questions documents, quite well elucidated. Introductions, orientations. We'll have new orientations with the new enrolling class. And so let's take a look at some of Sarah Kincaid's, let's see, getting to know the bee families of Oregon. Something to keep in mind for everyone that's out of state is our bees in British Columbia it's the same fauna more or less as to what's in Oregon. It's all the Pacific Northwest and Columbia Basin fauna for the most part. And so here we have Sarah talking about and introducing the various groups of bees, providing a basic introduction. Something's not happy here. There we go. So bee biology, broken down by family. So you can watch a lecture on each family, which introduces all the genera and what all the different genera look like and what they do and where they live and what kind of things they like. And on and on and on. And then finally, as Bonnie mentioned, we do have, so serving for bees. We do have all sorts of, actually we have this whole section of programming from the Master Beekeeper Program. So if you're also a bit interested in honeybees, we have all of this information. And then past lectures, which because we host monthly online meetups, one is called Catch a Buzz. And usually we talk about current events we're hosting, and then usually have some sort of educational component. Or we have our out-of-state mentor sessions. We have all these different additional lectures that are recorded. So all about different genera or families. A lot of this is natural history, but of course, taxonomy is part of it because when dealing with so much diversity, you have all these names. And so one of the first things you need to learn is start to associate all these names that you're learning about these different groups of bees with what they look like and what they do. And that's kind of like stage one of the Master Melittologist program. And I'll leave it at that.
And another thing that Link hasn't mentioned, I don't think, is that if you dig around in that Canvas portal, you can find the taxonomic or the bee literature folder. And I don't know how many papers are in there, but pretty much if you're looking for any kind of key to try and figure out what a bee is or a paper written on bee taxonomy, they're all in there. How many papers are in that file, Link?
Yeah, I don't know, about 1,500. There's probably some papers by Heather Higo in there. There's all sorts of stuff in there.
So there's a lot of information. I'm seeing some questions about the sign up. And so when you go to the link to sign up, it's going to say you're putting your name on a waiting list. And then I think from there, you will be getting more things sent to you to finalize your application. Is that right, Link? Yeah, so if you sign up for the waiting list, Jen Holt Jen Larson, who's our administrator for the program, will be contacting you and signing you up. For those of you that can't figure out how to fill in your Oregon county for your location, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can choose out of state Canada. Otherwise, just choose any county and then just put in a note or something that you're in Canada. You know, they know that people are applying from Canada. We also have applicants from California, Washington, Idaho, Colorado, North Carolina, New York,
and other places.
I see that Chloe is asking for the BC course. Are the volunteer-led field days required? And so the answer is no. So the OSU will give you a certificate as a certified apprentice master melittologist when you complete. I believe you need to, for an out-of-state participant, it's different if you're in Oregon. For an out-of-state participant, you have to complete the modules. And then I think you need to attend a certain number of mentor sessions, which are online. But there isn't a requirement to do a field day or a microscope day. But I would encourage you to go to a field day or a microscope day if at all possible. And that's why we want to provide some of those in BC, because having that in-person education is really great. Are there any other questions? If anybody's had their hand up and I haven't seen it, go ahead and unmute yourself and just yell at me. Trying to scroll through the chat and look for things. Any other questions? Maybe Lori, do you want to say anything? You were running the iNaturalist this summer. So did you want to talk a little bit about that photo-based collecting?
Awesome. So can I share my screen then?
I think you can.
All righty. Stop share. Okay, find my little presentation with you. Et voila. Okay, so yeah, I found myself just not really comfortable with pinning bees. I thought, oh yeah, I'll do it. It'll be great. It'll be fine. It'll be great. But then because I spend so much of my life trying to save the bees, I just found it really difficult. And you know, I'm an artist, I'm not a scientist. And so I would rather study bees through photography, and you know, technology for photographs are getting better and better and better all the time. And I mean, if we can identify Hylaeus down to species, that's getting pretty good. Of course, it's not going to be, you know, there's some things that we can't do. We can't look at a male bumblebee's junk to identify him to species, but hey, that's okay. I actually really like identifying bees from photographs, and I love seeing people's photographs that they enter into the iNaturalist project. And we would love you to contribute to this. And we would love people to also have regional projects. So, you know, like some people, they get to know the bees in their region, and then they can really help us identify, you know, some of the color morphs of the bumblebees that are in their region that are different from other regions, and the plant insect relationships, which is what I get really excited about. So it's already bee season. There's records coming in still from last year, but there are Bombus wesneski out there. There's of course the early Bombus melanopygus coming out there. They're in the heather. They're warming up. They're getting ready to rock and roll. So I got to get my ID hat on again and start IDing bees again. And I wanted to show you. Here's Sarah's. Where's my slideshow? Oh, come on. Anyway, Sarah's an artist who talked to us about creating spaces for Anthophora bees that nest in walls. And she said, I would like to know where these Anthophora bees are in British Columbia. And they're out there. We've got Anthophora bomboides, which nest in walls, and they're on the island. In the south there, you can see Brian Starzomski's wonderful photos of these bees that look a lot like bumblebees, and they nest right in the sides of the cliff. And Finn also took some great photos, and it's a really cool thing to do. And what Sarah's doing is she's actually getting scientists to put buckets of mud out there so that the bees nest in the mud, and then she can take them to her wall that she's constructed, and then they move into the wall, which is very fantastic. And we were going to try this on Galiano Island, and that's still something that might happen in the future. Another Anthophora that we're looking for, and we want you to look for this year, is Anthophora occidentalis. Link says they're out there in British Columbia and BC. I mean, British Columbia and Alberta. I've seen them in Alberta in a secret location that Link took us to, and saw these beautiful little chimneys that they make as they nest in the side. There's so many things that you can explore with photography. You don't need to pin bees. So I think that you can get a lot of joy out of using your phone, using your macro camera, and my camera, is not the highest high-end thing to do. So there's a lot that we can do with photography-based projects, and I'm really excited about it.
Thank you, Lori. Yeah, so there you go. For anyone who's like, oh, I really want to study bees, but I really don't want to kill bees. You definitely do not have to kill bees to be part of this project and to learn a lot from what it is offering.
I do want to say one more thing too, though. It does get pretty taxonomic heavy, and if you're thinking about it and you have no experience at all with taxonomy, I would definitely think about taking a basic entomology course first. And I know Paula, one of our board members, has been doing that, and she has some links to that. So just to warn you that you do get thrown into the taxonomic deep end pretty quickly. So that's just something to think about.
We will use terminology. Yep.
Yeah.
There will be many, many bee words. Any last questions before we wrap up? Thing you're burning to know?
Well, I'll say a couple more things. I like to talk. I guess something I'd like to just reemphasize is that as you might have seen, this program offers like incredible volumes of information, and you can go down the rabbit hole as far as you care to, but also the program is self-paced, and there's no obligation to go out and make a collection. There's no obligation to make it to the master level. A lot of people are actually content staying at the apprentice level. It all depends on how much time and everything you want to put into it. But regardless of your level of interest or how many microscopes you already have at home, this is like a crash course in ornithology where you learn all about the different kinds of birds. I don't know that much about birds, and so this is something that might be equivalent to that, where you just you go through the modules and then you attend some of these monthly lectures and you learn about all these weird mason bees that are out there in the mountains that are specialized on collecting huckleberry pollen or whatever they are, because there's a million fascinating stories here to tell.